Okay, if I ask you to go on to a page of your notebook, an empty page of your notebook, that you would be able to give it back to me, and you put your name at the top, and I would like you to make a graph, not a formula in mathematics, a graph, that you can explain to me what is the future value or present value in a graphical presentation. Can you do it? Yeah. Future value or present value? Can you graph it there? Christian. Can you go to your book and find out the page that explains what is a present value or future value in graphical relation, a very simple way.
Well, would it be page 33?
Where is the graph on page 33?
Where it shows
The one that it comes from the Excel.
Yeah.
But this graph, supposedly you have to have a formula, and that formula calculates a number, etc. I don't want that. I want to know a very clear way of being able to graph things. Go to page 45. Go to page 45. Do you see a graph on page 45? Hmm? Do you see a graph on page 45?
Yes.
Is this graph correct?
Yes, it is. Are you talking about?
Are the math that are related to the graph correct? And one student said that this is a mistake here, and that's the only mistake that passed through the revision of the book, and it appears in version 3. And I want you to think about the mistake. Radhika, you did math here or
No.
Good.
Home.
Okay, then you have to find out the mistake. And I'll wait for that. Do you see what is the graph?
Yes, I see the graph.
More people. What is the graph on page 45? You don't know. You don't know, and you don't go to sit with someone who has a book. Did I tell you to go and sit with someone that has a book? Okay. Go there and sit next to someone that has it. Okay. Caroline. No, Ebony. Go to next to Mahibu. Stay there. If he doesn't do it, kick him. If he doesn't get the good kick, do you have it? Christian, what do you see at the top of page 45? I don't want you to see the equation. I want you to see the graph. What do you see on page 45? Can you explain to me? Good. Here I have a lady. Go and do the graph. What do you mean, no? What do you have here? Did I give you this graph in my PowerPoint? But I didn't give you for 3 years. So what is happening with this graph? What is happening with this graph? If in 3 years you plan to get this money, right now you need to deposit this money here. If This is your present value. That would be your future value. Why did Excel requires you to have one out of the two parts in these formulas as a negative? Because you have one flow that is credit and the other that is debit. You take and you give. Is this clear? Can I have exactly the same thing in different ways? Yeah, I can. I have the 3 years. I will take now and I will give in the future. And I want to be fair. Zaylin, what do I mean by being fair? What do I mean by being fair? I want the money after 3 years and the money right now to have an equal value. If they have equal value, it's going to be fair. If they don't have equal value, it's not fair. And I have two different cases. Nadia is my buddy. Jaylin is not my buddy. Can I treat them differently and be fair to both?
No.
Why not? I give Nadia $100, and after 3 years he gives me $100. I give Jaylin $100, and after 3 years he gives me $120. And I would say it's a fair game. Why is it a fair game, Rodika?
Because Nadia, it's your body and you didn't you didn't make money on the money you gave her, like.
Because we said the important point is what is the interest rate, the rate of return. And we said something that is important. The rate of return has 3 alternatives. The book gives you only one alternative. The reality has 3 alternatives. The rate of return can be positive. I deal with Nadia. The rate of return is 10%.
No, with Nadia, she gives you back 100.
With Jaylin.
Yeah,
I deal with Nadia. The rate of return is 0.
Yes.
And I deal with Ebony. The rate of return is negative. The rate of return is minus 2%. Why I would say I'm dealing with all these 3 cases in such a way that I feel that it's fair. And that's a moral question related to that. Many people dealt with that moral question. So, what is happening if the rate of return is positive? The book deals with that case that the rate is what? Who has a book? Ebony has a book. What's the rate that you have there?
6%.
The rate is 6%. If the rate is 6%, and I want you to think without being bothered with mathematics, formulas, and numbers. I want you to think simple. Rayana, if the rate is 6%, then you take one period and the money increases by 6%. You take another period, whatever you have here increases again by 6%. When we say increases, is the money that you have get 6%. The money we have get 6%. The money we get 6%. How many times the money are increasing? As many are the periods. How they are increasing? By multiplying. What is a multiplication? A power. Is this clear? Therefore, what is happening if you put X amount of money here, that amount of money that you will have at that point is based upon how much you put here, growing for 3 periods. Therefore, anything that is in the future value and anything that is in present value is the same. The book has one case. The book has the case that I'm putting right now. I may ask exactly the same case in the opposite way. Christy would say, why? Because in finance exists whatever we learn in accounting. If someone gives money, someone gets money. And if someone gets money, someone needs to give money. So we have the creditors and the debtors. Otherwise, we do not have financial activity. That's the basic duality. Is this clear, Rosalvi? Need to see your eyes. Is this clear? So you have the basic idea. How many have a book here? Let me check. Or the easiest thing is to see who does not have a book. Nadia has the book at home, has a notes here. Next week I want her to have a book. Leon Oscar are not here. Rosalvi has a book. So you can see the formula there. Look at the formula. Rayana doesn't have a book. Has a book. Look at the formula there. Dominique has a book. Next time I want you to have a book. Caroline has a book, or not. Look at the formula. Ebony has a book, she gives it to Mohibu. Laura is here. Yeah, have a book. You don't have a book. Rosalvi has a book. You share it together. Look at the formula. But I do want you to have your own book, so you will write your own notes in the book. Sadzia has a book at home, or in the order coming up.
No, it's already on the first page.
Xiaobin has a book. Giselle has Xiaobin's book, right? Look at the book. Rodika and Christy have a book. Mohibul doesn't have a book. Ebony is there. Justin, where is Justin? Is Justin here? Made a mistake. Robert is here. It's not Justin. Lee Justin never came here. Good. Now I would like you to go to previous pages of the book. I want you to go to previous pages in the book and find out if there is anything there that you can tell me how I will make this graph that I have on page 45 with the payment function. Is anything in your book that can tell you how I can make this graph that is here as a payment function? Is it or not? do you have another graph similar to what you see on page 45 in chapter 2 that is
45?
using the payment function? Again, I don't want Excel graph, Christian.
Would it be on page 37?
It's one page or two pages?
14. This is,
Can you check? One page or two pages? So I want you to mark this page here, 45. How to mark it? Like this, so you know that something is important here that you need to know. Page 37, Christian is right. Page 38 is another graph. Good. I want you to know these graphs. How do I want you to know these graphs? I want you to know this graph that if I take you and I run you and we walk for 5 hours all the way Central Park up and down, and when you are exhausted, you will be able to remember. Or if I'll take you to McSorley's and you have 5 beers, 6 beers, 10 beers, and you are drunk, you will know what is happening there. You need to know that stuff not in normal cases, but in the cases that you are exhausted. Otherwise, you don't know. So, how these two graphs on page 37 and 38 that Christian gave me are related to the graph on page 45. Can you tell how these two graphs on pages 37 and 38 are related to the graph on page 45? So if I had to rewrite that book again, and if he was not dead by now when we were talking, he would put the page 45 first, and he would put the pages 37 and 38 after. Because first you know what is present value and future value and how they are related, and then you put the alternative way of having it, which is payment. And what is payment? Laura. Kind of. Okay. Yeah. Yourself. Not really. Ebony. Robert. What is a payment? On page 37 and 38, you have payments. On page 37 and 38, you have payments. On page 45, you don't have payments. What is a payment? Nandia.
The fee that needs to be paid each period?
And I'll go here. And I'll go here and I'll put page 45 differently. In page 45 you have 3 years. What do you do in these 3 years? You put some money here and you take the money after 3 years. Do you have an alternative? Not get all the money together, but get exactly the same amount of money get exactly the same amount of money, not after the 3rd year, but take it after a period of the time altogether. What is payment? Payment is that instead of one future value, we have many future values. And these future values are equal values. Or, payment is if instead of making one deposit, you make many deposits. If these deposits are equal, then you use payment. So payment can be used as an alternative way either to present value or future value. Is this clear? Jaylene? Good, I want to see you in your notes. And Jaylene is smart. She wrote 4 years rather than 3 years. Because when I will give you the same thing as a test, I'm not going to give you in 3 years, I'll give you in 4 years or in 5 years. And when you have a payment, you have an alternative. Do you want that money at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year? Or when you make the payment, do you want that money to be made at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the period, or at the end of the period? In other words, if you have an alternative to this case here, what is the alternative going to be? You have 3 years. You make a withdrawal right now. You have to pay it in the future. Do you pay it like this? Or, sorry, the line is not straight. Or do you pay it like this? And this is everything we need to know. So what do we need to know? We need to know how things are balancing. That's why we have an equation. If things don't balance, then we will have inequality. If it's inequality, that means it's not fair. Equality means whatever I have on one side is equal to the other side. What is the basic equation that I need to know? The basic equation that I need to know is that the money in the future value, after given period, is equal to the money that I have at the present, based upon how that money grows. And the money grows because it's a return rate that is added to what I have. Whatever is in the parentheses, the growth factor. And the growth factor is applicable to as many years as I have. That means that the future value and the present value are equal, dependent upon what is the return rate. If the return rate is positive, the future value is more than the present value. If the return rate is 0, the future value is the same as the present value. If the return rate is negative, the future value is less than the present value. And I want you to write that stuff down in your notebook. 1, 2, 3. What do I want you to have? I want you to have the 3 alternatives. Positive, equal, and less than 0 return rate. If you have return rate positive, equal, and 0, then I want you to say, next to that, future value and present value are how related? And I want you to know what is happening if we move forward or if we move backwards. This is what I want you to do. I want you to know what is happening. And if we know what is happening, I want mainly to think about 2 movements. It starts from now and I move forward. And I start from now and I move backwards. Whatever is here and whatever is here should be in a particular relationship. Should be positive, negative, or zero return rate. Therefore should be able to increase, be the same, or decrease. Is this clear? I want you to look on page 45. And if you look on page 45, I want you to tell me what is happening to the formula that you have, page 45, for the future value. Is it correct or not? Christy says that formula is correct. This formula is what I have here. Whatever I have in present value, 93 something dollars, goes up and grows for 3 years, so it becomes $100. Here is $93. I don't bother about the cents. Correct? No, it's 83.
83.
So for 6% in 3 years, $83 and $100 are the same. If there is interest rate. If the interest rate is zero, why zero interest rate? Why zero interest rate? Who first said that we had rates zero? In other words, when we lend money to our own people, we should not charge them. Who gave first this stupid or smart idea? And what is stupid or smart? Who gave this idea first to humanity? And why? Who? So, Moses was in Egypt. What the Egyptians were doing? Exploiting. Then he goes on and gets the law. And when he gets the law, he has to deal with the Jews. When the Jews have to deal with the Jews, they should not exploit financially one from the other. Several years later, another philosopher in Greece, he writes a book, Moralia. He says, don't borrow money and don't lend money, because if you borrow money and if you lend money, you're going to be corrupted. And then about 1,000 years later, another prophet writes another book and says, you should have zero interest rates. So all the major religions say no interest rate. Why? Today, all the major faithful of all the major religions charge interest. And that's a moral question. But the question is not only moral, the question is practical. If the rate is zero, then $100 are equal $100. If the rate is positive, then $83 become $100. If the rate is negative, the $83 would be $79. Is this clear? What is fair and what is not? I would say all of them are fair, based upon what is the relationship, or based upon what actually is happening. And I want you to know the main ideas, how these things are related. So what do you have? You have two flows that are related. Payment means what? Instead of having two flows, you had instead of one flow, many flows, but these many flows have equal value. And then the case is, what is the difference? If the rate is different than 0, because if it's 0, then it doesn't play any role. If the rate is different than 0, different than 0 means that may be positive or may be negative. And I want here to tell me what is happening in this case. You get this money now, and you have to pay them. If the rate is 0, means that I deal with Nadia. Nadia gets $300 from me, and I give Nadia the opposite way, $300. And after a period, Nadia gives me 100, gives me 100, and gives me 100. 0 rate means what? The way that my father was thinking. He gives back the same thing that I gave today. But when you get a loan, that's 2 chapters further up. When you take that money now, you pay them in the future. But when you pay them in the future, you don't pay only what you get, but you also pay interest. And that money is split into 2 different parts. What you pay for the loan and what you pay for the interest. Chapter 4 is nothing else but just this plain idea in all possible cases. And I want you to put it in your mind in a very simple way, because things are simple. Chapter 4 is an application of chapter 2, how you calculate loans. Do we have any other alternative? Yeah, these numbers may not be the same, but these numbers may be something that we will have it in a very simple way. Nadia may pay $100 here, $90 here, and $110 here. Or Nadia may pay $110 here, $100 here, and $90 here. The sum whatever she pays is exactly the same what she got. Is the rate 0? Yes. Whenever the total is equal to the total, the rate is 0. If Nadia gets a loan from me, I don't charge her. If Nadia gets a loan from Jaylene, Jaylene is charging her, because Jaylene is in business to give loans. If her daughter borrows money from Nadia, what is happening? Nadia will give her the money and she doesn't want anything in return, as long as the daughter behaves. If the daughter doesn't behave, then she will say, pay for your education. But if the daughter goes to school and she gets an A, Nadia will say, I don't need the money back, I'll take the A. Is this clear? This is all about this particular chapter. Did you put it in your mind? If you put it in your mind, let's see what is the mistake. Page 45. Do you see page 45? Page 45, what do you see? In page 45, you have $83. How $83 become $100? For one period, 83 is multiplied with 6% and is added to what is 33. In the second year, is multiplied with 6% and is added to what is the period before. In the third year, you do the same thing. I go now and I want to ask you a question. Can you go to Excel? And when you are in Excel, take whatever it is on page 45 and make it to happen. What I want you to do, I want you always to have whatever you need formatted. In page 45, I want to find out what is the present value of $100 that I have in the future. Right? Can you use the formula from Excel? If you use the formula from Excel, you will find out what is happening. Present value, I need the rate. I need the future value. And I need the number of the periods. Whatever I have is dollars. This is what I get, as long as I know this part. Is this clear? Now I want you to do something else. I want you to take the formula that is here in the book. You have a formula in the book, and I want you to put it in Excel. And I want you to find out what do you get here. And I want you to use exactly the formula that the book is giving you. If you get $83.9, you will do the same. You will have faith that the formula and the other thing is correct. If you have something different, then something is not right. And I want you to be trained like Nadia. Why like Nadia? Because Nadia got a promotion. She is going to be the manager. Is she going to stay manager? No. Nadia eventually is going to be the boss. The boss is not a manager. She's going to have her own business. If you are a manager, you need to know what people do right and what people do wrong. And I want you to have the formula. What do I want you to do? I want you to come here, put an equal sign, and put whatever you have in the book. What do I have in the book? In the book I have the future value. How the book is giving to me. Like $100. I don't want the $100. I want it to be in a cell. Then what it has, I divide it by 1 plus the return rate to the power of minus the period. This is what I have whenever I copy the formula from the book, right? Christine, is this right? Whatever I wrote down, is it whatever I have in the book? Rodica, whatever I put down there, is it what I have here?
Yes.
Did you put it?
Mm-hmm.
Good. is at $83.96. Good, the lady here is lucky, she gets $119.
I don't get it.
So she's gonna get an A. If I click it, what do I get? Whatever Sadzia has or whatever the book has.
We have what she has.
And I want you to know how to make mistakes. Mistakes are important because you learn from mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you never learn. But if you make mistakes, you need to learn how not to make that mistake again. And what is important? If you learn from someone else's mistakes. So, Radhika, why did you get whatever Sadzia has?
Because we have
Yes, Giselle.
because we have
Because Giselle, what did you get in
$100
algebra?
and 5 or 6%.
What did you get in algebra? Hmm? What? What grade did you get in algebra? Good. Giselle, like me, got an A in algebra. And if you got an A in algebra, you have A in your record, but you don't know. And it doesn't matter because Giselle and me moved on in life. But if you have A in algebra, it just stays there and you don't know. Yes, Adzia?
I was gonna say, if you take away like the negative before, it automatically turns into
Good. What? When I was looking at the book and giving him all mistakes, I did not do it. When they were doing the same thing, they didn't do it, and the mistake came here. We have a repetition of two things. And if you repeat the same thing twice, you get a mistake. What do you have here? I will make the formula in such a way that I would lock it, so I will play around with it several times. I lock it. This is what Sadzia has. This is what Rodriga has. I take it, and I want it to find out how I will correct it. I want to use exactly the same data. That's why I lock it in terms of a column, so I have it here and I can see it. One way to do it is if I take all these things out, and I get another number. That number is not the same thing as it is here. I take this number and I have another case. And I make two different alterations. This is what I have in the book. That's a mistake. This is what I try to correct my mistake. I still get a mistake. This is what I try to correct my mistake, and I have it correct. And this is what I want you to learn from me. That's why you pay me to be here. You don't pay me to go through the book, you pay me to put you how to think. You need really to learn what is happening and what is happening. And why one is different from the other. I will ask you that in the final exam. I'll give you similar case that is a mistake, and I want you to go on to correct it. And I want you to learn something that is important. Not everything that is in any textbook is by default correct. You need to think twice, 3 times before you take it face value. Not anything that the professor has myself or anyone else is by default correct. You need to judge whatever you receive. Correct is what you test. And if you have a B in algebra, you can be able to test. And I would ask Giselle and everybody else that has B in algebra to find out what is the algebraic error that you have here. And I want you to be able to deal with that case. Is this clear? It's not. I need to go on and work things step by step. Step by step means what? I start with the present time and I go on for one more period, and I go for 2 periods, and I go for 3 periods, and at that point I have this amount of money. As an exercise, I want you to be able to tell me that after 3 years, you will get $100 with 6%, if this is the case. So you start with this amount of